Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I am your host, Brian Scott. Today, we are returning to the Psychiana lessons, and we're going to start going over the advanced course number 2. It is not necessary for you to have listened to any of the other lessons in the Frank B. Robinson series. Frank B. Robinson was an amazing writer and teacher of what he called the God Law, and each of these lessons are sort of an advanced law of attraction teaching. We have now gone over 20 different lessons, the advanced course number 1 in the Psychiana teachings. Psychiana was a set of teachings that were sent by mail, a mail order course, and this became a religion for a short period of time. The first 20 lessons were amazing, but it was a big commitment. And it's tough for me to commit to doing lessons on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis. But I promise you that we're going to be going over some more Psychiana lessons. And today we're going to advanced course number 2, lesson number 1. I will call it Demonstrating the Power. I found this to be a very fascinating lesson. In it, he reprints 2 letters and a wire Robinson claims to have received from people needing or asking for help and then having their problems, whether financial, health related, or other, answered by contacting the God realm and asking for what they desired. Robinson focuses on contacting the God realm to get what one desires, as in his letters and examples, and reminds students to do his meditations and provides new affirmation exercises. So for those of you who wanted to take this to the next level, this will start to do that. And I promise we will continue to come back to this, but it may not be on a bi-weekly basis. Psychiana, advanced course number 2, lesson number 1, Demonstrating the Power. Dear friend and fellow student, in presenting to my students this second advanced course of Psychiana at the very outset, let me say that unless the first course has been quite thoroughly assimilated, and unless the spiritual God realm has really been contacted, the student may have some trouble in digesting what is to come in this second advanced course. Therefore, before we go any further into this second advanced course, it would be advisable to take stock and see just where we stand. The only way I can tell of the benefits received by my thousands of students all over the world is by the personal letters they write me. And it would amaze you, I think, if I could show all of these letters to you. Some of the most remarkable results of healing I have ever witnessed or heard of. Then again, there have been amazing material results far exceeding the expectations of the student when he or she enrolled with me. As an evidence of these material results, I should like to reproduce here a letter received but a few days ago from a student in Texas. This party lost his home. The world certainly looked back for him, for never did he think that he would ever see that home again, much less own it again. They had lived in that home for 10 years, and much loving effort had been spent in making that home what it should be. Then, through the depression, probably everything was swept away from that couple. They lost this beautiful home and never had the faintest suspicion that they would ever get it back again. Then one day, the eye of the husband happened to see one of my advertisements in a magazine. He answered it and enrolled as a student with me. In 9 months' time, he possessed his home again, getting it back for $1,000 less than he owed on it when he lost it, and also got it back on $24 less on his monthly payments. There was a direct evidence of the workings of the law of the Spirit of God. This man had never heard of me before. He had never heard of Psychiana, and yet within 9 months of enrolling with me, he had his home back again, and much more favorable terms than those on which he was buying it before. I know that you personally need no proof now of the existence and power of the Spirit of God, but I do want you to read this student's letter to me, received but a few days ago. It follows in full. To Dr. Frank B. Robinson, I agreed to report all benefits derived from the study of your course of instruction. Here goes. On July 1st, 1932, my wife and I lost our home through inability to meet the payments, which were high at that time. We were very much depressed as we had lived there for 10 years and we loved the place. We had no idea of ever getting it back at the time. However, since we lost it, I saw one of your advertisements regarding Psychiana. I wrote for information, received it, and later enrolled for your teachings. As my wife and I progressed in your lessons, we put them into practice, and believe it or not, on April 1st, 1933, just 9 months after losing our home, we got it back. And what I want to say is that we got it for $1,000 less than we owed on it when we lost it, and also got it for $24 less on monthly payments. Does the law work? I'll say it does, when properly applied. We are now studying the 17th lesson of the course, and I want to say that I can truthfully say that I have learned more from the course of instruction regarding life and spiritual things than I learned in all the rest of my 43 years of life. I am happier, healthier, and enjoy life. I never was much of a believer in church teachings, but until I began studying your course of instructions, I never could fathom what God was. I know now what God is, and I know that you and your teachings are right. I now believe that my attention was called to your advertisement through this God law in order that I might profit by it. Well, I have, and anybody else can, if they will, study and follow it as directed. My wife and I both believe this to be the most wonderful teaching we have ever come in contact with. Wishing you the very best of health, success, and happiness in your life, work. I am your friend and student, Esley Beeching. Now, I think you'll admit with me that certainly some intelligence, some power of some sort was put into operation in the case of this beloved student of mine. It might have been coincidence, and then again, it might not have been. Certainly the results were good, and seeing that there is no such thing as a coincidence in the world, then it must have been what it was. And that is the great God law in actual operation in response to the desire of the heart. There can be no other explanation of it. Were this one incident alone, then of course it might not mean so much. But when such letters as this pour into me every day, and when my files are literally jammed with such letters, then I am forced to admit there is indeed an unseen intelligent law, which law works with amazing and remarkable precision whenever and wherever it is applied. And not alone along material lines do I find this law working, not by any means. I think perhaps along the healing lines, the effects of the law of the Spirit of God are more remarkable than in material things. And that is as it should be. I received a telephone call the other morning. It was about 2:30 in the morning to be exact, and the telephone call was from San Francisco, California. Naturally, it was a case of life and death, or this family would not have called me at that hour. However, I care not what the hour may be. If it is a serious matter, my students are welcome to call me, and I shall be more than willing to respond. The day before, I had received the following wire from this same family in San Francisco. I remember that I had talked with this lady about 1 year ago on a tour of the Pacific Coast cities. She was a wonderful little lady. Her husband sails the seas and is not at home all the time. Here's the wire I received from this household. San Francisco, California, Dr. Frank B. Robinson, Psychiana at Moscow, Idaho. Miss Ethel Cohn is dangerously ill. Physician has given her opiates. She is calling for you to help her urgent. I had already replied to this wire when the long-distance call from San Francisco came in the middle of the night. My telegraphic reply read as follows: "Am remembering Ethel Cohn, look for immediate improvement, signed Frank B. Robinson." I shall ask my advanced students to note well that in practically every case wiring me for assistance physically in an emergency, I almost invariably wire back that immediate improvement may be looked for. Sometimes I wire that an immediate recovery may be expected, and this in the face of statements by reputable physicians that death is but a matter of a few hours only. Please try and see how I put the law of the Spirit of God to work. That is not the best way to say it, but you know what I mean. I don't really put the law of the Spirit of God to work at all. What I do is to establish a channel of faith through which this law can work, and the results are always sure whenever this channel of pure faith is established. You cannot put the law of the Spirit of God to work, for it started to work millions of ages ago and has been working for you and for me ever since. May I call your attention once more here to the fact that whenever And wherever the necessary belief in the ever-present spirit of the law of God is manifested, the desired results are always sure as sure can be. I will grant you that sometimes it literally seems to tear me to pieces to manifest this necessary faith. But when I cease trying to manifest that faith, there steals over me a sweet confidence and a childlike faith that smiles at disaster, that smiles at disease, and almost invariably the results are sure. In your everyday life, I want you to find that sweet confidence and its accompanying peace, which confidence and peace wins the victory and fills and thrills the soul of a man with power from the realm of the law of the Spirit of the living God, the most natural law this old world has ever known, and yet at the same time the hardest law to get men and women to believe in. I want you to see that here, please. I want you to remember that when these telegrams come to me, I know in whom I believe, and I know that the law of the Spirit of God cannot ever begin to fail me. So I just simply keep very quiet for perhaps a second, and the victory is won. Back goes the assuring wire, and the patient usually recovers, even though death was close at hand but a few hours before. The first telegram from the Cone family in San Francisco was dated April 11th, 1933, and my reply as quoted above was dated the next day. Now let me reproduce to you a letter from Mrs. Cone herself, written on April 16th, 1933, just 4 days after her life was despaired of, and just 4 days after her husband had been told she could not possibly live. Keep in mind, please, that the best medical advice obtainable had been called, and every intelligent effort to save this girl had been tried. I knew that, and I also knew that this was a case where the direct acting Spirit of God would have to be thrown into action, or death would have ensued. I respect a physician more, perhaps, than I respect any other profession. I have in my employ at our beautiful clinic in Moscow, as chief surgeon, one of the most intelligent medical men, one of the most capable physicians I have ever seen. This man is a Christian man and perhaps one of the most competent surgeons in the United States. The Spirit of the law of God works through every move that man makes. Every time he practices his profession, he is doing it by and through the power of the Spirit of God. And there can be no medical or scientific discoveries unless they originate in the realm of God. Yet medical science comes to its limits. It finds that it can go so far and then has to stop. It is then and there that the power of the Spirit of the law of God steps into the picture, and seemingly miraculous oftentimes happens. Some people don't understand why we have a beautiful clinic building with complete operating rooms here in Moscow. Well, let me say to such people that many and many a time the knowledge and experience of a reputable surgeon works far better than allowing the law of the Spirit of God to work alone. If the answer to any problem has already come from God, then a request for an answer that has already been given would be quite useless. In the discovery that diphtheria antitoxin is a specific for the otherwise deadly disease of diphtheria, the law of the Spirit of God has already given to mankind the specific for that deadly disease. And all that remains for you and for me to do is to use the specific through some reputable physician. More than one foolish fanatic has died of diphtheria with the God-given remedy at hand because they thought that in some miraculous way or other God would speak in a different manner in their individual case. And God, being law, immutable law, did not speak, for he had already spoken. And the foolish patient died. In establishing this clinic here in Moscow, I have at my disposal the best medical and surgical advice I can get, and certainly that assists the great God realm in performing its healing. For in the first and last analysis, all healing comes from the law of the power of the Spirit of God. But to get back to Mrs. Cone's letter, I reproduce it word for word. Dr. Frank B. Robinson, Moscow, Idaho. 4 days ago, you were called upon for help, and if it was possible for me to express just how serious my case was at the hour you heard from us over the phone, and you said you would certainly do all you could do. The physician was here and waiting to take me to a hospital for an immediate operation, and he said I could not live. He informed us that I was dying then. with my bowels in a strangulated condition, which condition came on very suddenly. I asked if he could not wait until I get in touch with you. He told me that I could not live anyhow, but I said I would live, for my life was God. In 1 hour after you spoke over the phone, I was resting so easily that I could relax and breathe easily, and no one in the house with me can understand how I am still alive and able to be up. This demonstration has brought to one physician at least what it means to know the power of God, as the God you have so patiently been trying to teach me and others of. The physician named Dr. W.H. Banks, and he said he was amazed. I am steadily getting better, and I know that trouble is overcome. But I do want to express my heartfelt gratitude to you for coming to my aid when my life was slipping away. The time was ripe for me to show my faith in what I had learned, and I knew I was part of the living God. And if you have anyone who is afraid to trust in the God you are teaching, will you kindly refer them to me? For I can prove by a responsible physician and other witnesses, responsible eyewitnesses, that every word is the plain truth. Only I'm not telling you how low my life was at the hour you took command. I don't care to even think of it, but do try and see me as just a human being who is trying to thank you for your help, when, if you had not have been a channel for the living God Spirit who was working through you, I would not be here to write this letter of thankfulness and gratefulness to you. For God alone, through you as his channel, raised me from my bed, and again, I express my gratitude. I remain gratefully yours, Ethel Cohn. I think you will agree with me that this was an amazing case, and one which makes the heart leap with joy as it recognizes the possibility of the further understanding and power of the law of the Spirit of the living God. If these cases can happen, and thousands of them do happen, then may it not be possible at some future time to so understand the law of the Spirit of God to such an extent that life and even death itself may finally be conquered. That, my friend, is exactly where this world is headed in the natural evolution of things that must be the answer. There is not another answer at all, nor is there any other future than that. The last enemy to be destroyed shall be death, and that day is coming and coming fast. It will not be here tomorrow, but all evolution today is along lines which can have but one ending, and that ending must be eternal life. Don't ask me when that day will come, for one day is nothing at all in the realm of God. What matters is if the day be 1 or 1,000,000 years away. There is only one God. There is but one life spirit, and you and I are parts of that great life spirit. And never you forget that. If it is possible, and it certainly is possible for trusting faithful souls here and now to launch out into the deep of the ocean of the love and the power of the Spirit of God, and perform what appear to be miracles, then what shall not happen when men and women by the thousands accept this mystic power of the life spirit and use it every day as it may be used? We live in a realm that is literally seething with spiritual power. I received from Germany the other day actual photographs taken up in the stratosphere by Professor Picard of the cosmic ray. Don't tell me that the God realm is not all around us. I know better, and I know something else. I know that you, no matter who you may be, may accept the presence of the Spirit of the living God here and now. And through that presence, you may, if you so desire, so keep in tune with the infinite Spirit of God, that you can and will overcome every weapon formed against you. The reason you and I do not know God as we should know this great Spirit is because we do not believe in the actual literal existence of that realm here and now. We can't see it. We can't imagine that such a realm exists. And a lot of us whose lives are very busy won't take the time to keep quiet enough to find out the marvelous power there is going to waste all around us. This power being the law of the Spirit of the living God. In this second advanced course, I want you to follow me very closely. And through your reading what I write, you will in all probability find a sense of the mysterious, though simple presence of the greatest power you have ever known. In the last course you studied, I showed you scientifically that there does exist an invisible realm of power, peace, plenty, and success is needed, and most of us need that success. I showed you how to direct your thoughts into that great power realm, and furthermore, I showed you how to bring into actual manifestation through the spirit of the law of God the things that you need for your health, happiness, and success. Thousands of my students have written me stating they have found the law of God to exist exactly as I stated it did. Shouts of joy have re-echoed through hundreds of homes as these simple truths of mine have won their way into the hearts of thousands of my students. Illness has been healed through the power of the living God. Material things have come into existence through that same power. Death has been ordered to depart, as is evidenced by Mrs. Cohn's letter, and there has been started around the world a stream of the saving and healing and rejuvenating power of God that never will be stopped. From a humble start of about 3 years ago, we now see our building occupying 1/4 of a block here in Moscow. We see the results of the Spirit of God in the lives of thousands. We see one small back room transformed into an entire building, owned by us. We see a beautiful clinic building here whose results will go around the world. We shall see before we are through here a 200 or 300 bed hospital building which we shall own, and the results of one man's simple trusting in the literal presence of the Spirit of the living God has proven beyond all pre-adventure that this great Spirit is a reality. I care nothing for wealth, my brother or sister. Just a few weeks ago, every dollar this corporation owns was swept away in a bank failure. 3 accounts went, and they are still gone. But there, out of the fullness of the heart of the great cosmic God, there came to us enough finances to put us at ease. A real friend, one who had found God through our humble efforts, made possible our continuance in business without annoyance. The money tied up in the bank was replaced, and today, as we write this, we thank the Spirit of the living God for the grace which gave and still gives us faith and confidence enough to fight through until our objective is obtained. I wonder if in this second advanced course of Psychiana, you will follow me through the spiritual realm as you did through the scientific realm as taught to you in the former course. If you will, I shall try and bring your life in tune with the life of God. I shall try very humbly, but very earnestly, to tell you in words that you may understand just what the power of the Spirit of God may mean to you and yours. I shall ask you to do exactly as I say. Not because it affects the Spirit of God, but because if I have trodden down a certain road many times and you have never trodden it, I should be in a position to explain to you what the road is like. I should be and think I am in a position to tell you a few things you will meet along the road. I know a few of the side roads on which you might be lost, and better than all, I know something of the peace and the spiritual power that exists in this great power realm of God. I do not pretend for one moment to be a Superman, although many look upon me just as that. But I am not. All I am is a man who, through trial and tribulation, has learned that God exists. I have learned that the Great Spirit exists, not through priests with their foolish twaddle and preachers with their old musty dogmas, but that this great power spirit exists as free as the air. Furthermore, the farther you keep away from a church house, the more you're apt to find the beauties of the Spirit of God. I don't say to keep away from the church altogether, for many nice social times may be had there. But as far as trying to find the truths of God through any priest or preacher or mass house or church house goes, then I suggest that you do not try that. For the realm of the Spirit of God are so far higher than the man-made conception of them that there is no comparison at all between them. So in this second course, please may I ask you to follow me closely. I gave you affirmations before in the last course, but I shall give you more here. I shall ask you to still practice the relaxing exercises, though not too much, for by now you should be in a thoroughly relaxed condition all the time. Instead of doing those affirmations, I'm going to ask you in this first lesson to get down on your knees by your bed after arising every morning. This is not prayer in any sense of the word. It is but a waiting on the great power beam of God, and that power is what you need before you start the day. Don't even say a word. Just quietly kneel there and wait until you feel that the Spirit of God and you are in accord. Then rise, go and do your daily work. And the last thing at night before you retire, get down on your knees again. In the evening period of resting before God, I want you to say out loud, although quietly, Father, tomorrow I shall be closer to Thee than I was today. Thank Thee. That is all. No more than that. Then, on retiring, carry the same thought into your sleep as you have been in the habit of doing. Keep this up until the next lesson reaches you in about 2 weeks. Sincerely, your friend and teacher, Frank B. Robinson. This particular lesson reminds me of the story in the Bible where Jesus is amongst the crowd and the woman who is sick desperately wants to be healed by Jesus and reaches and simply touches his robe. And the very touching of the robe, she is healed. And he notices it and says, "You were healed by your faith." And what happened here is something similar. The woman wanted to be healed, and he gave her that. He's saying it doesn't take him a long time. He's not sitting for hours imagining for the person that they are healed. He says it takes a second. But he sends them a cable that says, "I remember." And that's an important part. If you go back to the beginning of this and what he said, it's pretty fascinating because that wording, I think, hopefully would go into a little bit more later. In his telegraph, am remembering Ethel Cohn, look for immediate improvement. He has those words capitalized in the transcript. Am remembering Ethel Cohn. So it's possible he's using the I remember when technique, placing in his mind a memory that Ethel Cohn is immediately improving and telling them that. And that process of telling them that gives them the indication that their faith is working and that their healing can begin. Mark my words, she is healed by the Spirit of the living God, but by herself as well. It is her healing that is occurring in this process. He is simply awakening that healing process in her. So take of it what you will, but I found it to be very interesting and fascinating. We'll look into the other lectures very soon, but I thought you guys might like that new lecture. This is a short one, so just let me know if you want more lectures in the Psychiana series, and I'll be sure to do it. In any case, you can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.